I was an investor in FTX International and an investor in FTX US, and I was a paid spokesperson. This was not one of my good investments. This was a bad investment for a whole host of reasons. It's now up to Sam Bankman-Fried to clear his name. He knows that. He's going to have to do whatever he can and come out and explain what happened. I want an explanation, and we don't have it yet. So I'd like to get the truth. That's what I'm after. And, you know, there's no question. All of the paid spokespersons, including me and Tom Brady and Seth Curry and Giselle and right down the list, we're all being sued. During that process, we're going to get to the truth. When litigation scrapes to the truth, and that's what's going to happen. Look, I would have rather not been involved in this, but it doesn't change anything I do, and it doesn't change my policy of transparency. And if people want to be crazy online, I've been watching this for years. I mean, it's noise.
In today's video, Canadian businessman and entrepreneur Shark Tank star, known as Mr. Wonderful Kevin O'Leary, updates about the crypto market, his take on Bitcoin and where we are headed next in the crypto space. He is also a proponent of crypto regulation, believing that it would be a positive thing for Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies in general, as institutions would feel more confident investing their clients' money in them. Before listening to him, please ensure to smash the like button and subscribe to the channel.
Obviously, the FTX collapse is going to have some peripheral damage, and you're starting to see it happen. And I think there's more to come. I was an investor in FTX International and an investor in FTX US, and I was a paid spokesperson. And so those are all facts, and I'm living with them every day. This was not one of my good investments. This was a bad investment for a whole host of reasons. Luckily, I'm fortunate that this particular investment, both the ones in FTX, the accounts that I had in FTX, with millions of dollars in them, and the ownership of FTX US, was not in a fund that had other LPs. I owned it 100%. We hadn't made the decision to diversify yet. We were waiting to see if FTX would go public and how regulation was going to come forward before we put other people's money at risk. This was all my money. So I'm thankful for that. Of course, I hate losing money, but it's not going to change the way I operate or what I'm going to do tomorrow morning. I'm going to continue to be an investor. This is not about crypto. This is about bad policy, bad regulation or lack thereof, if you want to put it that way, and some very weak compliance management. That's what's happened to these companies. It doesn't change the potential of what crypto is going to be, but certainly it was a hit. There's no question about it. And, you know, it's embarrassing for me, obviously. So much due diligence had already occurred. I mean, if you look at the cap table of who was investors in this company, it's the who's who of financial services. And so I'm one of them. We're all embarrassed. We feel foolish. But luckily, when I look at the long term, thank goodness I make more good investments than bad ones. That's the way I look at it.
I believe you had a conversation with him right after the fall. Do you speak to him on a daily basis?
Not on a daily basis, but again, let me be transparent and clear about what occurred. I was in Dallas, Texas, doing a keynote, remarkably, to a group of graduating cohorts of engineers and others at the University of Northern Texas. I think that's where it was. We got out of that speech, and that actual discussion that day was about how disruptive crypto was, so it's kind of ironic. I'm at the airport waiting to take off, and I get a call from one of my team members who is looking at the situation saying, hey, listen, Kevin, why don't we buy FTX? If it's really on the desk for sale, if CZ is going to buy it for between $6 and $8 million, why don't we buy it? And why can't we be part of that? Because remember, FTX had prior just done a round at a 32 billion valuation. And this was before any of this nefarious stuff was flying around. It was the Thursday. And so it wasn't clear to me whether it was 6 or 8 billion that they were looking for to clear the demand, or if you want to call it the run on the bank. But I needed to know the real number before we could syndicate that amount of capital. That's a lot of money. And so I called a contact there that I knew worked on the balance sheet, and I just got a voicemail, so I left it with that individual. And then maybe 2 minutes later, Sam called me back. And I said, Sam, look, I know you're going through a lot of pressure right now with this cash call. and the whole thing with Binance and everything else, but I can't do anything with this or get involved unless I know what the number is. And he said, the number's 8, not 6. I said, okay, that's all I need to know. And that kind of a number, believe it or not, is not that big for sovereign wealth funds. And so, and I work with them in the indexing business, so that's when I started making calls. And there was a fair amount of going back and forth. That afternoon, we delayed takeoff from the runway because I didn't want to lose signal. We were dealing with some sovereign wealth funds agents at that time. And then Gensler went on the air about 3 o'clock, and he made it clear that there was a hammer coming down. And the minute that occurred and the regulator was going to get involved, and then these nefarious claims and allegations started, that option of syndicating it with sovereign wealth was no longer an option for obvious reasons. And so I didn't call Sam back. I texted him back, said it's not going to happen. And that was the end of that. And then over the weekend, the alleged hack occurred. My accounts have 0 in them. There is no accounting records there. They've been scraped. I talked to many other institutions about those accounts over the weekend. We were talking with our compliance departments and our lawyers, obviously, and that's where it stands today. Obviously, and I want to make a comment about this, this is a tragic story, not just from a financial collapse, but it's a human story. It's an unbelievable story. It's probably going to be told, for years to come. And the chapters haven't even been written yet. We're not even in the first chapter yet. Everything's allegation and insinuendo. We don't know anything yet. And so I'm trying to keep an open mind about it. I'm not happy. I don't like losing that much money, but it doesn't change anything that I'm going to do tomorrow morning. I made a comment for years now in the context of entrepreneurs, and particularly broadcasted by Shark Tank for 14 years, that I am not scared of investing in entrepreneurs that have had catastrophic failure, because I find, both for men and women, that the sting of failure really motivates people to figure out what they did wrong and not do it again. That's experience. That's what it is. Now, when that interview was taking place, it was at the beginning of the whole shakeout and the rumor mill of what was going on between Binance and FTX. And so, I didn't know the situation. Now, obviously, Sam is currently not investable while he's under alleged investigation.
Okay.
But it's so no, I wouldn't do that because I wouldn't be allowed to. But the point was, we were talking about whether or not I would invest in entrepreneurs that have failed. And the answer still is yes. But obviously, the conditions have changed. Remember, this story changes every hour. I just want to make it clear here. I do invest in entrepreneurs that fail. No entrepreneur gets it right every time. So, to me, it doesn't change who I am or what I do or how I support entrepreneurs. But no, I don't investigate in people that are under investigation. I can't, and nor would I. It's now up to Sam Bankman-Fried to clear his name. He knows that. He's going to have to do whatever he can and come out and explain what happened. I want an explanation. Every investor does. Are you kidding?
How did you miss those red flags? And I know it could happen to anyone, but what was the error on your part? How did you miss it?
The truth is, and Danielle, I have to be honest about this too, I don't get it right every time. I don't. I've made thousands of investments. They're not all winners. This one was just, all of us that have talked about this, all of us on that cap table, we've all talked to each other. We're stunned. We're just stunned. But we don't have any answers yet. And so I would actually like to know how this one went down. And there's lots, if you just go online and see the due diligence that was done, it's alleged. Again, I keep saying alleged because the stuff that goes out there on the internet, a lot of this stuff is garbage, but it's alleged that Bain was hired to do the due diligence for Tiger. I mean, it doesn't get any bigger than Tiger. And so I'd like to find out more about that. I'd like to find out more about the other members on the cap table. We all look like idiots, and I'm the first to admit it. What would you like to say to the haters? Because everyone's coming out of the woodwork now, right? Yeah. Look, I understand how the internet works and how to, people want to say inflammatory things to get more users and rile up I'm a big boy on this stuff. I have to be honest with you without sounding trite. It's all noise to me. It's just Rabini, that's just noise, this Bitbozo guy, that's just noise. I don't care. And at the end of the day, it's got to be facts. The whole thing has to be driven by the truth. And we don't have it yet. So I'd like to get the truth. That's what I'm after. And, you know, there's no question. All of the paid spokespersons, including me and Tom Brady and Seth Curry and Giselle and right down the list, we're all being sued. During that process, we're going to get to the truth. Litigation scrapes to the truth, and that's what's going to happen. Look, I would have rather not been involved in this, but it doesn't change anything I do, and it doesn't change my policy of transparency. And if people want to be crazy online, I've been watching this for years. I mean, it's noise, and I tell my whole team it's noise. I tell my kids it's noise. You have to have thick skin to do what I do.
What's Sam like as a person?
He's an interesting person. I remember 2.5 years ago when I met him. We met one evening at, I think it was Bitcoin 2020, maybe it was 2020, I can't remember, either 2020, probably 2020. And we decided that weekend to do lunch. We went to Milo's, I remember it was going to be a half-hour lunch. I think we were still together 3 hours later. We were discussing many aspects of the FTX platform. I was particularly interested in it from a compliance point of view, whether was it strong enough to support institutional compliance, which is what we spent a lot of time on. One of my team members was there, one of his, and that's when the relationship started and the discussion around becoming a paid spokesperson occurred. And that's all going to come out. It's all fact, and I'm sure it's in my calendar with a date. And then I ran into him other times at different conferences, at his conference, various events. He's an interesting individual, and if this, depending on what turns out to be fact, he has a tremendous challenge on his shoulders right now. Everybody wants to know what exactly happened, and the only way he can clear his name, and let me be clear about this, is the facts, the truth, the timeline. It all has to come out, and it will. The one unique thing about this situation versus other financial collapses and calamities and disasters, everything that occurred here is on the blockchain. Every single transaction is recorded. Now, you may not know who the wallet is, who owns it, or who stole it, whatever these allegations are, but every single transaction will be able to be found. And so there's no hiding from it. It's going to come clean.
Do you have hate for him now?
No, I don't hate people. I don't hate people. Particularly in investing, you're taking a risk every day. And depending on what the truth is about this, I'm very disappointed. And I wish I could be the perfect investor. I'm not. And people that tell me they have a perfect track record are so full of BS. That's just not true. It's impossible to get it right. This was a big hit. Thank goodness it was my money and only my money. I'm so happy that our protocols forced us to keep it that way. No one that I invest with is touched any of this, and we wouldn't have put this into any other structure because there was no policy yet. We were hoping for policy and bills to be passed, and secondly, at the end of the day, we didn't understand yet whether FTX itself, both the U.S. and the international, would ever go public. Where's the liquidity? Because none of these companies have any liquidity. So I don't want to put that burden on anybody else. The timeline's unknown and kept changing. So I personally took the hit, and that's fine with me.